All right, welcome back to the program. Mr. Johnson Chukwue is joining us right now. He's the Chief Executive Officer and the Group Managing Director at Cowry Asset Management. Mr. Chukwue, we're speaking again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sister Nancy, for having me.
This sister. This sister which you have added. Okay, brother Chukwue, let's talk about Russia-Ukraine crisis. A complete disaster, isn't it? An absolute disaster. Did we see this coming, really? Because did you really see this coming?
Well, since the Russian government began to mass out soldiers or military hardware and personnel around the borders with Ukraine, and the Western countries have been announcing that Russia had made a decision to invade Ukraine and they were going to invade Ukraine. I believed they were working on very verifiable intelligence. And at that time, I began to suspect, I began to be apprehensive. I became very apprehensive because if the US government could be saying consistently that Russia was going to invade Ukraine and they had moved their embassy officials and they began to move their citizens away from Ukraine, from Kyiv, I knew that it was inevitable. And again, you can't imagine somebody like Putin will put about 100,000 soldiers on in the border at the borders with Ukraine and incur that expense without necessarily going to war. So I knew Ukraine, Putin is not the kind of person you think will incur such costs, move such massive military infrastructure to the borders with Ukraine and not take action. So I suspected it was going to come. I didn't know when it was going to come, just like the US was saying, but it became at some point almost inevitable.
Mm. You know, as we speak, so much has happened around the Ukrainian economy as well as the Russian economy. I just, this morning, I know that Russian billionaires, at least since yesterday or in the past 2 days, have lost about $39 billion so far. But let's take a look at the impact. Is Mr. Chukwue still there? Let's take a look at the impact of this crisis on the Nigerian economy with these facts. Russia is the largest country in the world by land mass. I think is also the number 8th in terms of population. Is Mr. Chukwue still there, Director? Number 8th in population.
Yes, I'm here with you.
Okay, number 8th in population. And what else again? Russia is the largest producer of wheat. So how do you think that this will really impact the Nigerian economy? Oil price over $100 now.
Well, in several ways, we should expect this impact on the Nigerian economy. Let's start from what reference you made that Russian billionaires have lost several billions. There are Russian businesses in this country, and those Russian businesses are really going through difficulties in the past few days. The simple reason that most Western economists, most Western lenders are pulling back their loans to Russian-owned entities. And some of those Russian entities have also extended loans to Nigerian entities. So you're going to see the Russian entities calling back the loans they've also granted Nigerian entities so they can meet the obligation to Western lenders. So that will affect economic activity in the country, it will affect business activity in the country. It could lead to fire sale of some assets. You could see a decline in asset value in the country. Secondly, as it relates to the oil and gas sector, Russia is the largest exporter of gas to the European market through the Caspian Sea. So, and now the Western nations are threatening to impose sanctions on Russia, which means they could cut off, if they try to impose sanctions on Russia, Russia could cut off gas supply. So you could see a sharp increase in the price of gas globally, including Nigeria. And unfortunately for us, we do not have the capacity to just suddenly, within a short time, increase our natural gas production. We've been banding around the additional investment we need to make in Bonny and some other LNG projects. But unfortunately, that never took place. So we don't have the capacity to upscale suddenly. And it relates to crude oil price. And we saw crude oil price touch about $104 per barrel yesterday. So this one is still doing about $100 per barrel for Brent. And ordinarily, we should be dancing to the bank. But unfortunately, we are not in that situation because we are producing just last quarter of last year, we produced only about 1.5 million barrels, and that included condensate. So if you adjust for condensate, we're just producing about 1.3 million barrels a day. And that means we may be spending more to import refined petroleum products than we are getting from the export of crude, which wasn't the case in the previous wars when we had the Iraqi war, the win for. But unfortunately now, we are in a more difficult, I mean, the Minister of State for Petroleum said that we are comfortable at the price of $70 to $80. Above that, we're in difficulties because we will spend more to import refined petroleum products than we will spend in from exporting crude. Again, the government had made provision for about 3 trillion naira of subsidy, and that was based on a crude price of about $75 per barrel. Today, $100 per barrel, that will increase by at the minimum 1/3 of. So if you look at that, you're talking of maybe we're talking about 4.5 trillion naira subsidy that the government has to absorb, and which revenue will it use to absorb that, to write that off? So we may see a situation where the war in Russia will lead to economic and financial difficulty in the country. Added to the fact that you mentioned also that Russia is the largest exporter of wheat, and Nigeria depends largely on imported wheat for its confectionaries like bread and all those things. So that means the price of such staple as bread may go up, which will affect the most households in the country. So across the board, right from oil, right from the financial services industry, to even basic food items, commodities, Nigeria will be at the receiving end as a result of this war.
Do you think that you've seen any kind of reaction from economic handlers in terms of how to address this crisis? Because you've mentioned it earlier, oil price at over $100 ordinarily, it should be good news for us. You know, when there's war, people are even still smiling, you know. It should be good news for us because we're a producer, but it will inflict pain because there will be higher subsidy payments now, running into trillions of naira. You've also mentioned gas prices. Russia is the largest producer of gas in the world. We know what we've been battling, at least in the last 2 years, in terms of even higher LNG prices here in Nigeria. So I wonder what it will be if this crisis continues, though NLNG has said that it's going to fill in the gap. Where I'm actually now going to is the economic handlers' reaction. You know, then speak to me also about the 4,000 Nigerian students that are stranded or that are still in Ukraine. Some will want to come back, some may not want to come back. The crisis of handling it by the foreign ministry yesterday, I don't know if you saw that, you know, parental responsibility is the responsibility of the parents, and they came back again to say, oh, we're going to evacuate Nigerians and all of that. Do we really have our acts in order?
Okay, let's start from the possible response of our economic managers. Unfortunately for us, we have minimal headroom to maneuver. I did mention that we do not even have capacity to increase production, either crude production as it stands today, or gas production, so as to take advantage of the increase in demand or the shortfall of supply coming from Russia and Ukraine. So we are not in a position to take advantage of that. Conversely, on the converse, we actually in a position to be hit by additional costs. When you import 100% of your refined petroleum products, despite the fact that you're a major crude producer, and today you said you are consumption about 67 million liters a day, which is entirely imported. So that means that and again, remember that our importation of refined petroleum products in the spot market, not in the futures market. So we buy as prices on the day's price. I mean, at the day's price. What that means is that tomorrow, whatever we're going to bring in tomorrow will be based on current plant, which would mean that we are going to absorb the entire change in prices globally. So we are unfortunate. So what they are left to do is to look for resources outside the reach of the government or outside our natural revenue sources. So in that case, they will be talking about borrowing additionally. Just like the president said that when we accepted that we're going to absorb fuel subsidy at the end of this year, the government had to send a subsidiary budget of 2.55 trillion to the National Assembly. The minister said that there are some revenues here that they will be able to plug, But ultimately, whatever is the gap, we have to borrow it. So we may end up going to look cap in hand, looking for lenders to provide that funding that we need to tidy us through this period. Instead of, like I said, the other time we're talking about $12.6 billion of windfall from the war in Iraq. But now a similar war has come up, and we are the other end of it. We are the other end of the spectrum. As it relates to what can happen when it comes to evacuating, or how the Foreign Affairs Minister has responded to Nigerians living in those countries. In the first place, when the US government and Western countries began to evacuate their embassy officials, after evacuating the embassy officials, they first evacuated the families of the embassy officials, then they evacuated the embassy officials, then they evacuated their citizens. What were we doing? It beggars logic that why that was going on when countries who have reasons to say we can fight back, you can't touch our citizens because you know we will fight back if you kill our citizens, are the ones evacuating their citizens. How come we did not respond? And then the war has started. We're now talking of, first we said they are on their own, later we say we're going to send aircraft to get evacuated. Will it even be possible for those aircraft to land in Ukraine? The earliest targets of the Russian bombardment are the airports and the military facilities. So most of the airports will be put out. Most airlines have stopped going to Ukraine as a result of the war. So how will Nigerian chartered aircraft land in Ukraine to evacuate Nigerians? So why didn't we take measures earlier in the day to do that? And now that we're talking of this situation, can the embassy possibly organize an arrangement where the Nigerian people living in Ukraine and want to leave can go by train and get to Germany? Those are the things you'll be thinking of. But the key thing that we're reacting and responding too late. And that has always seemed to be our culture when the lives of Nigerians are at risk in countries that are volatile. I can't remember hearing anybody say anything about Nigerians being evacuated from Pakistan when other countries were evacuating their citizens. Yeah. So with this one, we sat on our palms and we allow it to happen on us. And then we're now saying, okay, first they're on their own, and now we'll do something. What will you do at a time when you can't send the aircraft to that country?
It's really a very, sorry situation, not just sorry, very embarrassing situation, as if we don't have people that are watching things that are happening globally and the response time. I'm just wondering how this would affect 2022 budget. Okay, ordinarily we would have been happy that oil price is over $100 US, but the projected revenue for this year, I think, is 5 trillion naira. We'll pay more for subsidy. Mr. Chukwue, I don't know, just what's your closing remark as we end this segment, because it's really, we'll continue on a later day, but what's your closing remark?
I think what is missing is that the country is not strategic when it comes to economic management. Yeah. If we are strategic, we'll be ready to take short-term pains to build a robust economic structure that will ensure that country will take advantage of emerging opportunities that will also position this country as an enduring and effective economy for investment purposes. That's what we've not done, and that's why we don't have a downstream oil and gas sector that is domesticated. We're importing all the refined petroleum products. We refuse to invest further to expand our LNG facilities, particularly the additional, the Bonny LNG and other LNG that we're supposed to come up. We have not done the investment, even when funding was available globally to do that. And then we respond too late, and when it comes to global issues around our citizens, or when the lives of our citizens are at risk. In a lot of instances, including when we have had wars in West African countries, Nigerians were always the cannon folders because the country's Foreign Affairs Ministry responded late. And we have not developed a strategy to respond timeously to issues around the globe to protect the life of our citizens and protect the assets of Nigerian citizens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chukwue, for joining us on today's edition of the show. Let's continue to watch the situation closely, but it's a very critical one. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend.
Same wishes.
I've been speaking with Johnson Chukwue, the GMD and the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Asset Management. We've been looking at the impact of this Russia-Ukraine crisis on the Nigerian economy. In case you think it's far off, that you're insulated, come on guys, you're not insulated. What we'll be saying in the last few minutes is that the price of agege bread might increase. Yes, I just made it as simple as that. For those of us that like agege bread or even bread, the price of pasta, what they call spaghetti, yes, may like